Welcome to another ResoLex Radar Talks. Today we're delighted to have Liz Baldwin here, the Project Director from Mott MacDonald, but also the Head of Collaboration for the UK business. What I'd particularly like to explore with Liz today is the internal collaborative culture within an organisation and the decision on when to create an external collaborative relationship with another business. So if we may start, Liz, would you describe the internal culture of Mott MacDonald as a collaborative one?
So I mean it's a great question, and actually I really do think that they have a great collaborative culture within Mott MacDonald. My first experiences in Mott MacDonald actually were working as Alliance Director with Mott MacDonald as part of the Alliance, and I think ultimately Mott MacDonald is filled with people who are passionate about project delivery, technically incredibly capable, and just want to do a great job. And they see working collaboratively, whether it's within the organisation or with clients and partners outside the organisation, as the key to delivering that. So I think it's the default behaviour for people within Mott MacDonald to do that and delivering projects. And I suppose in trying to formalise collaborative relationships, what we want to do is instead of letting those things happen by accident, we're kind of proactively pursuing the benefits that will bring.
So that was exactly the area that I wanted to touch on. Does this happen by accident, or does it take specific activity to maintain internally that culture and that collaborative approach?
I think it's a bit like internal and external relationships, that I think it happens naturally. But like anything to do with, whether it's project delivery or whether it's at the higher level corporate relationships, you can either let things happen by accident and reap accidental benefits from that, or you can actively pursue it. So I think we've recognised that everybody's different, and some of our staff have natural collaborative behaviours that they have no issue in using all the time. And others of our staff, in the same way, at any part of their personal development, need a little bit of support and help with that. So I think it does happen naturally, but I think there are things we can do to support our staff and make sure that we bring out those things in them that will make it happen naturally and make them more confident in doing it, just as a matter of day to day. Ultimately, what we want within Mott MacDonald is that working collaboratively is part of the DNA of the people who are within our business, and it's just how they roll when they're delivering projects, whether it's working with each other or it's working with other people.
And completely associated with that, and this is probably a far more difficult question than it sounds, what do you see as some of the key attributes to living that collaborative culture?
First and foremost, and anyone who knows me will know my view on this, it's got to be leadership. And the key to not just establishing but having a collaborative culture that thrives in an organisation has got to be the leadership that drives that from the very top of the organisation all the way through that spine of leadership that runs through the organisation. And that's got to be those people demonstrating the right behaviours. It's got to be those people living and breathing and sleeping them, and they're role models for people in the rest of the business. So not only do we set out for our staff, the standards of behaviour that we expect generally, but particularly around collaboration, we have leaders who demonstrate that to members of the staff, and it's an accepted norm that's how people behave, and it's also unacceptable if people don't behave in that way, and then that is seen to be dealt with in an appropriate way as well.
So you mentioned that there are specific CPD activities around collaboration. Are there any particular development activities that you go through that you have found successful in creating and continuing that culture?
Yes, I mean we've actually got two programmes that run. One is our Emerging Leaders course that we've identified rising stars within the business at varying levels who are then put on an Emerging Leaders course. It's a long course, and it's also has the advantage of being from people across the business. So not only are we growing and developing the leadership and collaborative skills of our staff, but we're also growing the network in which our staff operate. So on this course, a lot of them have built relationships with people across different parts of the business, that will go on to do them some, do them and the project and the business huge benefits in the future, because they know those people, they know who to speak to within the business, and all that is doing is just encouraging and breeding this culture of collaboration where people can just pick up the phone and talk to each other, who know each other, and as well as developing individual skills. The second course that we've been developing is called Integral Collaboration, which we've chosen to roll out at a more senior level. So we're rolling that out to our more senior leaders, and again recognising that there's transformational change that can be made by leaders at that level, and leading by example. And again, that's an intensive course, and in fact I personally have taken part in that course. I was on the first cohort that went through, and that is 5 lots of 2 days, which for people in the level of seniority is quite a commitment. And I think that shows the commitment that Mott MacDonald as a business are making to collaboration, and recognising the benefits that it'll bring to us as a business and also to our staff. And both of those we've found have enhanced the relationships within the business. Great, project and business practice, great efficiencies across the business, and has really developed those collaborative behaviours. Ultimately, if we can work well together internally and collaborate, and that's natural, we'll do it externally as a matter of course.
Absolutely, and as you say, that particularly that senior leadership course, that is a commitment of time for those executives.
And there was probably about 30 or 35 of us on the course from across the business, so it has been a significant commitment.
So we've discussed a bit about the internal collaboration there, so now on to the external. So insofar as developing a collaborative relationship with another business, if we could start with, what is it that you think is advantageous in a collaborative relationship over a transactional one?
I think cultural alignment, I think, is one of the key things that businesses that have a similar cultural alignment will generally have similar goals and drivers in terms of what they want to achieve from the collaborative relationships or from the particular projects that you tend to work together on. So I think first and foremost that's one of the key things, and what we tend to find is that if we have a good cultural alignment with the organisation, then we tend to find that the collaboration, the behaviours just more naturally comes, because we naturally, I think, as businesses employ staff who find it perhaps easier to work together.
And what process do you go through to decide which relationships should be undertaken on a collaborative basis and which should be undertaken on a more traditional transactional one?
So we in essence do, I suppose, a benefit analysis at the project level. So what we'd want to look at is the benefits that establishing a collaborative relationship at project level would bring to the project. So we'd want to see and expect tangible benefits in terms of, so if we establish a more collaborative relationship, because that does take time and effort, and the reality is it costs money. So what we need to be able to see is that brings a tangible benefit at the end. So before we're even thinking about establishing a relationship, we want to think about what are our goals, what are the outcomes that we want from the project, and we then look at matching those with potential partners that we then want to work with on a project by project level. So again, cultural alignment is one of the things that we would consider, but also have we worked well with this organisation in the past on a project level, and we'd feed those kind of things in, and we get feedback from all of our projects that have been completed, and likewise our more strategic relationships in terms of, have we worked well together? Was it a good relationship? Were the behaviours of the organisation? We do look at collaboration maturity. So is there a good match there in terms of the organisations? But that's at a project level. Inevitably, there'll then be those organisations that we're starting to see as a business we're working more consistently with across multiple projects, across multiple sectors, and then at a corporate level, we would then at a collaborative steering group, we'd ask ourselves the question. Actually, we're establishing now multiple collaborative relationships with this particular client or this particular partner. Do we want to take that a stage further and establish a more strategic collaborative relationship, where we're then setting out as businesses, business to business, how do we want to work together across any of the projects or any of the individual prospects that might come up. So we're giving that guidance at a more corporate level. And the great advantage of that is that we're guiding our project teams when we're bidding or when we're going into delivery and setting the expectations from both businesses, which is then consistent across each of the packages we deliver and each of the sectors, which can have a huge advantage.
And when you're developing those, probably if we look more at the project base rather than the strategic relationship base, from your experience, are there any sort of key steps that you feel help build and develop that collaborative relationship?
Yeah, so I think, again, leadership being quite important to setting this off on the right foot. I think the first one is getting the buy-in and engagement at the senior level within both organisations, even for a project, so that we would usually use a term, perhaps steering board or a JV board if it's a JV type partnership, where you'd want to get the senior leaders getting the buy-in to the collaboration, to what the collaboration is wanting to achieve. And then one of the key things on the journey, as well as assessing almost your compatibility, I always sometimes like to think of it as a bit of a marriage, I suppose, as well as assessing your capability and sort of compatibility in that way, it's actually having an open and honest discussion about the goals and objectives of each of the organisations and what you want to achieve from not just the collaborative relationship but from the partnership as a whole, from the project, because the key to successful collaboration is being really open and honest at the beginning and being able to trust each other. And I think if you can't have those conversations at the beginning, or you don't, then it sometimes can cause conflict, I think, further down in the relationship. So I think, again, one of the keys is being able to have that honest conversation. And then seeing that leadership from the steering group level all the way down through the project leadership, driving the right behaviours, driving the right culture, and just embedding it, because it takes time.
Absolutely. And so, that's a little sort of theoretical. Do you have any case study sort of experience of projects that you could share with us where you have achieved the desired value through a collaborative relationship? So
I suppose the example that springs to mind is Wessex Capacity Alliance, and I was the alliance manager for that, and the alliance was made up of Skanska, Colas Rail, Mott MacDonald, AECOM and Network Rail. And the leadership in that was incredibly important. So the alliance leadership team selected me as the alliance manager to lead the alliance going forward. And then I was empowered to select my management team, and likewise that level of empowerment went down to all the way through the sort of spine of leadership. And the key there was working together to firstly agree the standards, the vision, the behaviours that we wanted from our staff, to then get their buy-in. And actually we ran a workshop on the platforms at Waterloo Station for about 300 people, where we in essence, myself and one of the Alliance leadership team members presented a draft charter that the leadership team had put together, and presented our thinking, and then sent them all off into workshops where they answered 3 key questions. And then we did you said we did, and then amended the charter based on the feedback we'd received from all the groups. And then that was the charter that we then lived by. So we all had it in the back of our notebooks, it was up in the office, and we held each other to account to make sure that we were delivering to that. And it just became embedded as part of our annual appraisal system and all those other things, which was good. I suppose the end result of that hard work in establishing the right behaviours, selecting the best person for the role, regardless of the company that they came from, resulted in, firstly, I suppose, delivering what was an incredibly difficult and challenging programme, both in design and construction, on time and within budget. Also resulted in the project still going on to be delivered despite going through 3 Hendy reviews. So certainly that was a huge success, and has ultimately also resulted in millions of pounds worth of savings to the project, but in the collaborative nature in which we were working, an open environment in which people felt they could challenge and had a voice where they were listened to. We, for example, saved £5 million at International Terminal by being able to remove the need to construct 75 piles, which doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but then at the other end in International Terminal we saved tens of millions of pounds in just finding an alternative solution at that particular end, which reduced the volume of demolition, which was more constructible and was more accessible in terms of the public using the station. And we made a decision to pursue that in parallel with the preferred option at the time, and spent a little bit of extra money in making sure we didn't lose programme, but we pursued an option that we knew would bring benefit to the project. And I think that if we hadn't have been working in a collaborative relationship, if we'd been working in a more transactional way, we wouldn't have made those savings.
So there, it's real. You've lived through it working, and it's very obvious in talking to you today and on other occasions that you are very passionate about how collaboration can work, provided that it is understood and that it is done for business benefit, not for a tick in a box or a certificate on a wall. So thank you ever so much for that insight into your world and into Mott MacDonald's. So Liz, thank you very much.
Thank you.